fact, this time last year, there was a tsunami warning very much like this, and when the tsunami actually came ashore, it was only a couple of inches. This time, people feel a little bit different. They think this is the real deal.
Yeah, well, Carter, I mean, they're saying metres. They're talking, 2 metres, this wave that could hit all those countries. And I think we're talking about more than 20 countries. But, Hawaii is certainly in the firing line. Tell us about the previous tsunamis that have hit Hawaii. You say the one last year was only a couple of inches, but what about in previous years? Any larger ones that have hit the islands?
If I'm correct in my Hawaiian history here, I believe the last devastating tsunami to hit the Hawaiian Islands was back in the 1950s, and that struck part of the big island of Hawaii, a town called Hilo, and it was...
I think we have just lost our Carter Evans, who is reporting live from Honolulu. But as he said, it has just gone 10:45 p.m. People are hearing the news of what has taken place in Japan. They know that the sirens have gone off and that they've been told to go to higher ground. Well, let's now go to our Christy Lustau, who's going to explain exactly where the earthquake struck.
Yeah, let's map out this ongoing disaster for you, and we want to show you exactly where all this is unfolding. The epicenter of the quake was right out here in the sea. It's about 130 kilometers to the east of the city of Sendai. It took place at a depth of about 24 kilometers, which is very shallow indeed. Now, the site, it lies about 373 kilometers from the capital of Tokyo. That's where we've been watching all these images of the buildings shaking in the capital and the population there forced to take cover. The quake, it was even felt in Beijing, China. But there is no doubting where the greatest impact has been. While tsunami waves have affected much of the East Coast, with areas around Tokyo submerged, the most dramatic scenes you've been watching have been playing out along the coastline and farmland near Sendai. Local media reporting a tsunami of up to 10 meters. That is 33 feet. 33 feet in height. That wall of water pushing through is clearly going to have a devastating impact on everything in its path. Now, I want to show you some video out of Tokyo as the earthquake struck earlier today. Now, this was the scene in our Tokyo bureau. If we bring up the video for you, you could see our CNN producer, Junko Ogura, running to her desk. Let's take a look at it. The tremors lasted for several minutes there in Tokyo, but Tokyo again, 373 kilometers away from the epicenter. Anna.
Yeah, Christy, we've just heard from the US Geological Survey that has said that at least 18 aftershocks have occurred since that 8.9 quake shook Japan. All those aftershocks were 5.4 magnitude or above, the strongest being 7.1. Well, let's go back to our Rosemary Church at CNN Centre. Rosemary.
All right, thanks, Anna and Christy. Yeah, we do want to just recap you now on the tsunami disaster that's still unfolding in northwestern eastern Japan. It's too early to say how many people are missing, dead or injured, of course, at this point, although we heard a number there from authorities that the scope was perhaps around 8, but the fear here, of course, is that that number will unfortunately and sadly rise. An extremely powerful 8.9 quake struck about 150 kilometers off Honshu province, and that was just a few hours ago. That's an unprecedented quake for Japan. They're used to many quakes, but not of this magnitude when you're talking about 8.9, and there have been half a dozen or so serious aftershocks, some up to 6.8, so that is an earthquake in itself as an aftershock. Now, a tsunami, of course, that's that speeding wall of water slamming into this line. That was just a short time ago, and a number of waves following that too. It rolled over towns and fields, and of course there was just not the one, but this one was dramatic when you see this water flood with boats, cars, and in too is the sad story of for our eyes, and you see there fires on the ground. Now, motorists were ahead of the wave. They tried to escape, of course, to move that wave. You can see them there, and just look at that fire. Now, several have erupted across the area that was hardest to hit. This is actually an oil refinery in the city of Chiba. And tsunami warnings have been issued right across the wider region, the Pacific Rim, and we are told more waves are expected for Japan. And while watches and warnings are up in some 20 or so countries now, we're hearing in the Pacific, that's from the Philippines to Russia, Guam, Australia, Indonesia, Taiwan, a whole range, and the US state evacuations are underway. So we're keeping a very close eye on that. All right, Kyung La is on with us now. I'm not sure if you're on the line or they're live in the studio. And I'm hearing. Kyung La, we haven't spoken for a while now. No doubt you've had an opportunity to gather some more information on what able to tell us, particularly the effects there on the coastline.
Well, information actually has been really difficult to gather, Rosemary. Let me explain why. This is one of the only phone lines we have out of the Bureau. Phone lines are very difficult to get right now, whether it be a mobile line or it be a landline. The system is simply jammed as people are trying to reach their loved ones, especially if they're trying to reach up north. So the infrastructure right now is simply overloaded. It's only 3 hours since the initial quake struck. Information is starting to seep in. The local authorities and the local media are reporting a vast array of numbers that at this point we just simply can't confirm, including a number of deaths, how many fires there are, and there are reports of injuries across the country. But at this, trying to confirm that information, trying to get and really understand what's happening up north has been extraordinarily difficult. I can tell you that we are still feeling aftershocks here in Tokyo, that they are certainly nothing like that first one we felt, the first quake we felt 3 hours ago, and they've seemed to lessen in strength as the day progresses. But the aftershocks are continuing. Here in Tokyo, the rail line does not appear to be back up yet. As we last checked, people are still kind of walking around in the streets. It's a bit of an extraordinary sight. If you go by any of these parks, the parks are simply filled with people who are standing around trying to figure out what they're going to do next. So it's really been a bit of an unusual day in Tokyo as people try to sort of gather their thoughts and try to remain calm and try to respond in a calm manner. We want to make clear the situation in Tokyo is vastly different than what's happening up north. Up north is the impact of the tsunami. It is the immediate emergency, trying to rescue people out of that region, trying to collect the lives there, trying to make sure that people are okay and try to respond to that initial emergency. Here in Tokyo, because we have such a dense population base, you have 13 million people here in this city, and if you don't have effective public transit, you really are going to have a serious problem. The people, for the most part, are behaving very calmly. A lot of the buildings have been evacuated. We're the only people left in this particular building. And at this point, it's the evening commute home, but there's no easy way to get home now.
Yeah, and Kyung La, you mentioned something earlier that when the rail line stops, that's when people, certainly in Tokyo, know that this is a serious situation because they are used to earthquakes all of the time. But once the railways stop, that's a different story, isn't it?
Once the railways stop and then they announce that they will be shut down for a while, that is extraordinary. This is a country where if your train is maybe 10 or 15 seconds late, you start to question it. You start to wonder what's wrong. So when a rail line, and there's an extensive rail system here in Japan, when it's completely shut down, that signals that there is a national emergency going on, and certainly that's what Japan is experiencing right now.
And as you mentioned too, it is very difficult to confirm information in a situation like this. It's ongoing. This is not over yet. People are still waiting for more waves, more tsunamis there in Japan and right across the Pacific Rim. But we were hearing information a little earlier about confirmed deaths, 8 confirmed deaths. But unfortunately, I mean, that number will rise in this sort of situation.
I can tell you from listening to just the various national newscasts here, Many people are saying that the number is much higher. We have not been able to confirm any numbers, but certainly when we're talking about a magnitude, an earthquake of this magnitude, an impact region that is so wide, we're expecting that there could be a rise in those initial numbers.
And of course, the witness reports we've received from people there in Tokyo, as you point out, and as they pointed out too, a very different situation for people in Tokyo. It's a very sturdily built city, 13 million people, as you said, and for those people, they're very calm. But of course, it's along the coastal areas because of these tsunamis where the mechanisms are in place for people when those waves do come ashore.
With an emergency broadcasting system. And as soon as there is a tsunami warning or alert issued, there is an immediate bulletin issued, whether it be via mobile phone, television, radio. This is one of the most plugged-in countries in the world. There is vast wireless access. Almost every single person you meet has a wireless phone. So if that alert goes out, it is a message that is received. And this country prides itself on getting the word out very quickly. The problem that we have here is because we're talking about such a large tsunami, such a large earthquake, it's very difficult to respond to a very large emergency like that. So the country can try to be as prepared as possible. Can't prepare for everything. I can tell you from being along the coastline that when you stand on the coastline, something that you notice in Japan is that there are actually gates built into the concrete. There are not the wide sandy beaches that you might expect in an island. There are huge concrete walls. There are concrete gates that immediately close once there's a tsunami alert issued. So this is a country that tries to prepare for a tsunami, that has been affected by tsunami, that has had people die from tsunamis in its history. So it does try to prepare for that. But again, what any emergency personnel will tell you is that we can prepare for the worst, but we can't prepare for everything, especially when you talk about a large event like this. We're starting to see even more devastation, more pictures coming through, and we're expecting much more of this to come in, what you're watching on your screen here, because everybody has a camera, everybody has a mobile phone. So we're anticipating this is something that we're going to see being shared across the country. Many, many people felt this earthquake here in Japan today.
Most definitely. Kyung La reporting there from Tokyo, our correspondent there covering the whole of Japan. Want to just recap you very quickly on what we know. We don't have confirmed figures of casualties at this point, although we did hear from NHK television a number there thrown around of 8 people, but the problem here is, of course, that will rise. And we know at this point that the tsunamis keep rolling in on the coastline. It's not only Japan being affected by this. There are many countries, 20 or so involved: Taiwan, the Philippines, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Hawaii, Australia, Marshall Islands, Russia, Guam, the list goes on. There you see the Pacific Rim. All of those countries within that area are under warning and threat of tsunami reaching the shore. So people are advised at this point to seek higher ground if that it is at all possible. That is where you will seek safety if you can get to higher ground. That's the best advice that people can give. We heard that from authorities there in Japan saying to people, make your way to higher ground if at all possible. If you're inside a building, try to get out of that building and evacuate, because these aftershocks and the tsunamis, they are the deadly mechanism that comes after this initial 8.9 magnitude quake. So we are continuing to watch this. I'm going to hand it over now to Anna Corrin in Hong Kong. Anna.
Rosemary, thank you very much. Well, let's continue our rolling coverage of this massive earthquake that has hit Japan. Let's now turn to the public broadcaster NHK and listen in.
Off the coast of Miyagi Prefecture, the quake's estimated magnitude has been revised upward to 8.8. The quake caused tremors with an intensity of 7, the maximum level on the Japanese scale of 0 to 7. Strong tremors were also felt in many parts of the country, including Tokyo. A series of tsunamis continued to has been reported across Japan after the powerful earthquakes. In Miyagi Prefecture in the north of Japan, buildings and cars have been left submerged in cities hit by repeated tsunamis. Police say an unknown number of people are missing in many cities, where tsunami waves up to 7 meters tall swept through low-lying coastal areas. Sendai Airport is also submerged. People are stranded on the rooftops of buildings and runways are closed. Iwate Prefecture in Kamaishi, Iwate Prefecture, an NHK live camera captured a port flooded in seawater. Cars and trucks were floating amid the debris. An NHK helicopter has captured images of an oil refinery in Chiba Prefecture near Tokyo on fire. Black smoke can be seen billowing from the refinery. According to the Nuclear Power Security Agency, the 5 nuclear power plants in northeastern Japan have shut down. There are no reports of radioactive leaks. And as of 6 p.m. Japan time, at least 18 people are confirmed dead. And there.
We've just been watching the public broadcaster NHK there bring us the very latest from that 8.9 magnitude earthquake that struck Japan at 2:46 p.m. local time. It is now in Japan, but it was that massive wave that hit the east of the country, that massive devastation that we give of that wall just going straight through. Massive devastation is. Well, let's go to our who witnessed the quake, but as we mentioned, it's in the northeast.
Yeah, Tokyo has trying to organize its people, trying to keep the people calm. This is a very dense city, but the immediate emergency is certainly to the north of us. That is very much a rescue operation, trying to get people out of that region. The immediate emergency of this tsunami, trying to contain some of the damage that they've seen. Very different emergency up north than it is here in Tokyo. I mean, here in Tokyo, we're hearing reports of cracked walls, items that have fallen over and hit people. We have a problem right now with the lack of public transit. It's a very different emergency down in Tokyo than it is up there. Now, we've heard the camera and tell people to remain calm. The city of Tokyo and trying to keep millions of people very calm to get them home in an appropriate manner. But up north, trying to rescue those people, that is a very different situation than it is here in Tokyo.
The area that has been hard hit, Kyung, like Sendai, that people, and it was where they struck 100 meters with all that massive wave just all through the area. But we witnessed those pictures of people standing, either on top of the highway, witnessing this wall of water just heading towards them. We know, Kyung, that the death toll, it really is going to rise quite dramatically.
We're just by watching the local newscast here in the national broadcast, I mean, we're hearing a wide variety of numbers that they're going with as far as an injury. We simply can't confirm it at this point. Are predicting and already reporting that the casualty figures are quite a bit higher than the ones that we have been reporting on our air. And just looking at that wall come through that town, is not as populated as Tokyo. But this is a populated city. This is a small city known for a fishing community, known as around 240, 250. And if you're fishing and you make your living at the docks, it's going to be very busy there. Even if there is a tsunami warning, there wasn't that much time to evacuate. This is, a community which I'm guessing, it's a very educated guess, because people here are used to it. They know that when the tsunami warning comes to evacuate. And so they likely did have some sort of action plan to get out of there. But if you consider it's the middle of the afternoon on a Friday afternoon, this is a country that prides itself on working. Those areas were probably very busy. And so trying to get out of that region very, very quickly was certainly a challenge when this tsunami hit.
Kyung, we know that the military has been activated as well as naval vessels. They have been dispatched to the northeast of the country. No doubt, as you say, there will be a huge rescue operation underway to try and help any of the survivors. But let's now go to our Ivan Cabrera, who has been following this earthquake from the very, very beginning. Ivan.
Absolutely, Anna, and I tell you what I want to do is switch over to our Google Earth machine here. And well, in fact, let's show you the pictures here. But this is a widespread event now, and we're going to continue to follow this because as we speak, there is a benign rise in the sea level that is occurring across the Pacific that if you're on a boat out there, you're not going to notice. But as that wave approaches a coastline, that amplitude of the wave becomes higher and higher, and that is where you can get 25, upwards of, my goodness, 50-foot waves crashing on shore. We've already had reports of more than 25-foot waves hitting Japan. So we're going to continue to monitor that as the wave propagates further to the east. And again, this is one tsunami with many, many waves that are coming in. We've already seen that in Japan. Again, let's go through some of the countries here. Essentially, there are over 50 countries now in the Pacific Basin that are under a tsunami warning. That means that we are expecting a tsunami arrival. Over 50 countries in the Pacific. There are watches posted for California, Oregon, and Alaska. The rest of us here are under a tsunami warning. Let's start off with the next arrival. This is happening in just a few minutes here at 9:17 GMT, Wake Island. Are you watching us from Taiwan? Your arrival at 9:40 GMT. That's about 30 minutes away now, according to our times here. The Philippines getting in on it at 10 GMT, Marshall Islands at 10:20 GMT. As the wave approaches these islands, if we have folks available on the ground, we are going to try to make safe contact with them so they can tell us what is going on there. Each government, up to them, certainly how to evacuate folks. But keep in mind, some of these islands here are so tiny and so close to sea level that if you're talking about a wave, a wall of water that is 25-foot plus high, you can encompass the entire island here. So that is what we're talking about, the atolls specifically across the South Pacific. Indonesia arrival time at 11 GMT. And again, we're going to continue to track this for the next 24 hours, just like we did with the Chile earthquake. Solomon Islands at 12:28 GMT. Kiribati down to the south at 13:37 GMT. What we cannot do is forecast. And this is what everybody wants to know. If you're living in some of these countries, right, how high is this water going to be? Cannot forecast that because the bathymetry once that water approaches is so different in every coastline. The irregularity of that is so different that literally in the same country we could have an arrival of a 5-foot wave and just a few kilometers away a 20-foot wave plus. So that is the problem we have with trying to forecast these things as they arrive. We know when they will arrive. We just don't know how bad they will be. New Zealand at 18:23 GMT. Nicaragua, now we're getting into 2200 GMT, and I'll stop there because the warnings continue. If we have the other map, guys, that has the country cities on there, let's switch to that if you can put that behind me. We have warnings now that extend essentially to Mexico, Peru, California, Ecuador. All these regions are going to be impacted at some point or another, but that is down the pike. We're talking 24 hours, and we have plenty of time to warn those folks. The countries that you're seeing highlighted there in this map, those are the ones that we're concerned about because as you see the epicenter, they're 150 kilometers just east of Sendai in Japan. You are close enough to that epicenter where that wave, of course, arrives quicker to your location. Taiwan specifically, all preparations, and anyone along the coast has to have already moved inland, has to have done that by several kilometers, and certainly at about at least 15 meters high, 50 feet. That is your safety there. If you can do that and you're watching us and listening to us, that is what I want you to do. Philippines, the same deal. About an hour later, that's your arrival there. And again, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and there are the Marshall Islands. That's the tsunami threat, Anna. We are covering the tsunami threat, but in Japan, I just again saw another earthquake, which is essentially what we call them after the original quake, aftershocks, right, of a 6.4. Any buildings that have been compromised or structures that have been weakened as a result of the offshore 8.9 are going to come down in a hurry with earthquakes, aftershocks of that magnitude. So Japan is seeing a double threat here. The tsunami warning continues there. That threat is continuing and ongoing. And then the earthquake threat will actually continue well past when we're done talking about the tsunami here. One point about Hawaii and the islands further to the south and east of the Philippines here. Again, the Indonesia earthquake back in 04, we had that Banda Aceh at that 9.1, right? Look at all the land masses here that were essentially buffeting the water as it was moving in here. The earthquake this time happened here. Look at all the open space that that water has to travel. So that's going to propagate to the south, to the east. And again, you're not protected if you are facing one way or the other on the shoreline. The tsunami will surround you. And that's difficult to kind of grasp. You think wave is going to come right on shore from one direction, but it actually propagates and encompasses entire islands, and so really no one is safe, and that's why we continue to hear the civil sirens going off in Hawaii. We have our folks down there, and we'll continue to bring you updates live if we can get them from folks, if they can do it from safety. So again, Pacific Tsunami Warning Center now under a widespread tsunami threat for basically the entire Pacific basin, with few exceptions. Anna, over 50 countries will be impacted, and we'll continue to update the arrival times. Hawaii now at 3:07 local time. That is the initial wave that we're expecting there.
But Ivan, as you mentioned, Taiwan is next in the firing line as far as tsunamis go. Is that correct?
Yeah,
You're
that's
sort of
right.
saying in the next half an hour?
At 9:40 GMT is the arrival there. So that is going to be the next major area that is going to be hit. And again, the problem is we can't tell our good friends in Taiwan, you're going to be hit by a certain X wave. We just don't know until it actually hits because of the irregularity of all the shorelines there.
Yeah, well, Ivan, you've been doing a great job keeping us up to date and alerting all our viewers around the world as to what is going on. So, Ivan, we'll check in a little bit later as we get closer to that time when the tsunami is expected to hit Taiwan. Well, in the past hour, Japanese Prime Minister Naoto Kan has appealed for calm and cooperation as the government struggles to coordinate rescue and relief efforts. He is urging people not to panic, to be patient and to help each other.
The government will do everything possible to minimize the damage. It will do its utmost. The government will put its strength together and work hard in tackling this disaster. We therefore ask the people of Japan to exercise a spirit of fraternity, help each other, and to act fast, and to help one's family and neighbors. We should all help each other to minimize the damage. We ask you to act in such a way that it will be possible to minimize the damage. This will be my greetings as the head of the Disaster Relief Headquarters.
Well, let's now bring in our correspondent Kyung La, who is on standby at the Tokyo Bureau. Kyung, I know it's just gone 6:15 p.m. Tokyo is not as badly affected. It was obviously shook up, but nothing like what we've witnessed up in the northeast of the country. But tell us, this is obviously rush hour in Tokyo. People are trying to get home, and public transport is at a standstill.
Yeah, and I can tell you just by looking out on the street, there are a lot of people standing around. People have no way to get home. Without public transit, without rail lines, in a city as wide and as big and as spread out as Tokyo, without rail, this is a city that is paralyzed. And if you think about a city of 13 million people unable to move, that is a infrastructure problem. And so what the Prime Minister, what you just heard him say, he's speaking to a couple of different audiences. To his most populous city, he is telling them to please remain calm, don't panic, don't create a second crisis. To the people up north, where we've seen this massive devastation, they need to stay calm so they can be rescued, so they can try to work on survivors, so they can assess the damage and try to pull people out of this disaster. So he's talking to two different audiences. There is that immediate crisis up north, and we're finding that it's very difficult to get up there. According to the authorities, they've shut off all roads into the region. The airport is shut down. Rail lines are cut. So it's going to be very challenging to get up to that region. So that's one challenge. That's why we've seen the activation of the military so they can get up there as quickly as possible. But civilian traffic, it is almost impossible to get into that region. And with good cause, they want to keep this area as isolated as possible so they don't create a second disaster. As far as down here in Tokyo, it is just paralysis. That's the biggest problem. That a lot of people, I would say the bulk of people who work in downtown Tokyo offices get home via train lines. They have got to figure out a way to do that without the rail lines. There are no taxis because all of them are taken. So it's going to be a big, long challenge tonight here in Tokyo.
Kyung, I just want to tell our viewers that we were looking at new pictures coming into us from Sendai Airport, and you would have seen all those workers on top of the building. You could have seen the control tower at Sendai Airport. So, you know, it is just phenomenal to sort of think that this wave of water has just swept through this city of 1 million people up in the northeast. You can see cars just strewn about. This doesn't resemble an airport, nothing like an airport, but there are dozens of people on top of this building, obviously just riding this out, waiting to be rescued. We know that the military has been dispatched, that naval ships have been sent up to this area. A massive rescue operation is now underway. Kyung, if I can bring you back into the conversation, I mean, what sort of time frame are we talking about from the earthquake hitting to the tsunami warning being issued to the actual wave, that wall of water hitting the coastline?
It's very difficult for me to gauge because I was underground in the train station when the actual quake struck. So piecing together what I can, from what I gather, the big first quake struck. There was another very strong aftershock shortly after that. Then there was the tsunami. The tsunami alert came very quickly after that first quake. What I can't quite gauge is how quickly the water came ashore. It does not appear that it was a significant amount of time. That would kind of follow the pattern of what we saw 2 days ago. 2 days ago, there was a quake very close to where we saw today's quake. And then there was a tsunami. The tsunami came ashore only 30 minutes after the initial quake. So in a city of 1 million people, especially when we talk about such a big tsunami, it is going to be a challenge to try to get all these people up to higher ground very quickly. So that was the immediate crisis at hand that this city was facing when the alert went out. Were they all informed? I would bet your bottom dollar that they all knew, because this is a country that really does very well as far as alerting its people via mobile phone. It is a highly wired country. Many people have their mobiles with them at all times. So whether it's via mobile phone, television, or radio, the alert went out very quickly. In some parts of Japan, you do find out of an earthquake before it strikes, 20 seconds, 30 seconds before it strikes. So this is a country, because it is so earthquake prone, that does try to respond as quickly as possible.
But Kyung, I think it is definitely worth mentioning that this looks like low-lying area because it's agricultural land. I mean, this is where there are farms, and we have seen those pictures of farmland where this wave of water has just swept through, collecting everything in its way. So whether people have had an opportunity to get to higher ground, you know, nobody knows, certainly not yet. But as we mentioned, the death toll of this massive quake is expected to rise dramatically. Now, we're just receiving word that a tsunami warning has been issued to the entire west coast of the United States and America. That is what we are hearing coming out of Alaska there. So the entire west coast of the United States and Canada has been issued with a tsunami warning. Well, for some idea of what it was like to experience this massive earthquake, we have Charles McJilton on the line from Tokyo. He's the founder of Second Harvest Charity and was in his office in central Tokyo when the quake struck. Tell us exactly what went on.
And we didn't think too much about it, but it continued on, and it became progressively stronger. And so we all went out into the street, and that's where we saw the buildings moving. We saw our big Mercedes truck bouncing up and down in the street, and we knew this was pretty serious. Here last only a couple seconds and it's finished, but this one kept on going on, and so we knew it was pretty bad.
Have you ever experienced anything like this before, Charles?
I've been here 20 years. This is definitely the worst. You know, we saw it down the street. Luckily, there was no one there affected, but I'd never seen anything like that before.
And Charles, we know that whilst it is not working, it is the northeast of the country that has been hit so badly. Do you know anybody up there?
We have not heard any word from anybody up there. Most of the cell phone lines are down. The train lines are not moving, and so everybody is now walking home. In front of our warehouse here, we have just, you know, hundreds of people walking past us, you know, making their way back home.
And Charles, tell us, what is the feeling, you know, among your workers, among people on the street?
Well, I have two drivers still out on the road right now. We're hopefully, you know, we've not been able to contact them. We, you know, assume that they'll be able to return safely. You know, as any earthquake here, it is kind of unnerving to have the earth move before he's underneath your feet. So, you know, it's a little bit unnerving to have that. You know, we're standing by to be ready to respond to any needs up in the Sendai area or farther up if they need it.
Yeah, for sure, Charles. It is. I think it's one of those disasters where the entire country is going to need to pitch in. If looking at these pictures is anything to go by, we're showing our viewers pictures that were taken a while ago of the wave that has hit Sendai. This is in the northeast of the country. It's a city of some 1 million people, and the devastation there is simply enormous. There really is no other word for it. But for those viewers just joining us, a 8.9 magnitude quake struck Japan about more than 3 hours ago. It was 130 kilometres off Sendai. It was some 24 metres. It really has been hit hard by that tsunami that came, you know, after it came moments later, minutes later. But this wave has hit the coast, the east coast of Japan, and it has just caused widespread devastation, collecting anything in its path. I think now we are looking at pictures of the newsroom, I believe, in Sendai, the public broadcaster NHK. That was their newsroom. Let's have a listen in to what they went through.
Aftershocks quakes still continue here in our broadcasting center right here in Tokyo. And in Tokyo, several fires have broken out. The fire department says fires have been reported in several places, including Ariake in central Tokyo.
Okay, well, we've just been listening to the public broadcaster NHK there give us the very latest. Now, we have mentioned that some 50 countries have issued tsunami warnings, and one of those, of course, is the Philippines. Winona Cuevas, she is there in the Philippines. Winona, give us a sense of where you are and what authorities have told you.
Yeah, hi. Anna, there is much tension here as we approach the early evening hours when the authorities said that a tsunami would likely hit the Philippine eastern seaboard. That is the area facing the Pacific Ocean, and it stretches all the way from the northern islands of Luzon down to at least 4 provinces of Mindanao. Well, a couple of governors from these areas that I've talked to earlier said that their evacuation plans are in place and they're urging people to seek higher grounds as early as mid-afternoon. You know, this is something that we do quite often because our coastal regions are frequented by typhoons any time of year, but, you know, this is something else. Tsunamis don't really happen as often and not in a magnitude that threatens almost 20 provinces. And even here in the capital, which is between the east and the west, we do feel the tension because the last couple of days, our news carried statements from the Philippine Institute of Volcanology saying that a major earthquake is due to hit Metro Manila anytime soon. They said it's been some time since the fault line moved, so it could happen anytime. And what happened to Japan today and to New Zealand before that sort of added to the feeling of apprehension. Anna?
Winona, we just want to tell our viewers that we're actually looking at pictures coming from Japan. But I want to let everyone know that we are obviously monitoring the situation in the Philippines, and Winona is bringing us the latest from Manila. Winona, give us a sense of the low-lying areas along that coastline and how those communities will be affected if a wall of water hits it.
There is a news coming from the 17th Infantry Battalion of the Philippine Army. It just came in about 2 minutes ago, and it said that the wave has reached about 1 meter, but they are urging everyone not to panic yet because evacuation is underway in those areas. But, you know, if the tsunami waters do manage to come inland, there is also the possibility that it might cause our lakes and our rivers to surge. That is the danger that is facing us right now.
And what about people? I mean, how many people are we talking about who could potentially be affected on the east coast of the Philippines?
We are talking about 19, 18 to 20 provinces that are well populated, Anna. 20 provinces on the eastern seaboard.
You're certainly talking about a lot of people. Winona Cuvers there from Manila. Ivan, let's talk about the Philippines. How soon can we expect the tsunami to hit there?
Yeah, so what I've done is made this graph just so we can see it. We've been calling them out here as we get the information in from the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, but here are the major areas that are going to be affected. Essentially, what time is it? So 10 minutes. You have 10 minutes in Taiwan before the initial wave arrives. Philippines thereafter between 10 and 11 GMT. As I want to switch over to Google. Here are the Philippines. If you're not familiar with this region of the world, there is Taiwan. And again, this is the arrival times. Indonesia, 10:50 to 11:40 GMT. And there's Hawaii at 13:07 as far as the initial wave. Again, these are many waves here that are going to be coming in after the initial one. And a lot of times, oftentimes, right, the secondary or third or even fourth wave are the ones that are more catastrophic as opposed to the initial wave. So that's what we're forecasting here. Possible tsunami times for the estimated arrival of the initial wave here. 15:35 to 18:45 GMT in Australia. Fiji at 15:37. New Zealand at 17:20, between 17:20 and 22:15 GMT. And again, the difference here in time, there you see Chile at 23:03. And at 9:04, and the differences in time, of course, have to do with the topography here and with the land. The wave is going to just take longer to get to the further southern areas here of the Philippines. I'm really concerned about the tiny islands as well. There's Indonesia there that's going to be impacted as well. And remember, kind of think of, you know, when we see that icon of the epicenter, the waves propagating out, that's essentially what a tsunami does. These waves will go around the entire planet. Of course, by the time they get to the other side, they're not going to be as significant.